As we continue in our study through the book of Psalms, we are now at Psalm 144. So we've gone quite a ways. After today, we will have only 5 left. And from starting off with 155 is getting close to the end. So Psalm 144, another Psalm of David. This is the last of the David Psalms in the book of Psalms. The rest of them, I might say, are not from him. But I titled it, Who I Am Because of You. Okay? Who we are because of who God is really kind of the point that I'm trying to bring out of here. And because of who God is, it starts off with verse 1, Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Starts off with right there, God is my rock, my firm foundation, my solid, okay? And he trains my hands. So it's not only am I held fast, he also trains me. Now my hands would be the things that I do, and my fingers for battle, even the little things I do. So every aspect of who I am is because of the fact that my rock trained me to be what he wanted me to be. See, David here begins by affirming all the successes of himself and his successors to Jehovah. There was no success that he was looking at that was accounted to him. The same is true for us. It almost fits perfectly in with our Sunday school lesson, where to God be all the glory, not to self. Right? Verse 2a, my loving kindness and my fortress, my stronghold, my deliverer, my shield, and he in whom I take refuge. My loving kindness. That word we've seen so many times. Next week, when we look at Psalm 145, we're actually going to spend a big chunk of time on that word, because there's so much behind it. I'm not going to do that now. We'll do that next week. We know loving kindness is a word that is speaking of loving. Okay, but loving isn't love. It's an action. It's loving. It's doing something. And then kindness, of course, what is it doing? It's doing kind things. But did you know the word loving kindness actually is a noun? It's not a verb, it's not an adjective, it's a noun, because it is a thing. Person, place, a thing, remember that from school? New school probably doesn't teach that no more, but anyway, okay? So, David is looking, my loving kindness, going back to Jehovah, my fortress, going back to Jehovah, my stronghold, going back to Jehovah, my deliverer, going back to Jehovah, my shield, going back to Jehovah. In him I take refuge, because he is all these things to me. God's loving kindness is his only hope. It's also our only hope. Verse 2b, he who subdues my people under him. Now that almost sounds like a negative until we actually look at it in context. Nobody wants to be subdued, but in reality we do. Okay? We automatically think of being subdued as surrendering, giving into a force stronger than ourselves for their benefit, not for us. We're going to lose out if we are subdued. But David is talking about those who are under him because he is king. And those that are under him are I might say, basically his subjects. But also this is relating to Christ and his church. Because we are under Christ. We don't mind so much being subdued by Christ. That's almost a good thing. Well, not almost, it actually is. Okay? Now where am I getting this? How am I putting this together? Let's look at 1 Peter 2:9. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. See, we are subdued by God to be set aside, to be a royal priesthood, okay? God's own possession. David's had his subjects under him, which were his possession, but they're reflecting the reality of being God's possession, which we are. A chosen race, royal priesthood. Verses 3 and 4. O Lord, what is man that you take knowledge of him, or the son of man that you think of him? Interesting when you go back and you look at the original Hebrew, because there's two words for man here, and they have a different meaning, even though it's translated man each time, right? But when you look again, here, the original it helps so much to have this book that gives me the Hebrew along with meanings of that word. So the first man is a generic term, man, generic. Okay? But the second one is man, but it's kind of denoting weakness. So if we understand it, we look at it as, again, we've got man in the generic sense and man in the weakness sense. O Lord, what is man, the generic sense, that you take knowledge of him, or the son of man in his weakness, that you think of him? So if we think of mankind in the general sense as just being mankind, but then we think of mankind in the sense in which it is weak, it is need of something. Okay? David is looking at this whole concept and saying, what is mankind, and what is mankind that you would think of him because he's weak? Why would you do that? You are God. You are great. You are glorious. And mankind is the total opposite. But yet you still care about him. Even in his weak state, even in his fallen state, you care. You actually think of him. He's on your mind. Think about that for a minute. We are on the mind of God all the time. Goes on, verse 4. Man is like a mere breath. His days are like a passing shadow. In the whole scheme of things, our lives are really short. Okay? It's a tiny little blimp in eternity. It really is. It does not amount to much. And David here is kind of pointing that out. A mere breath. Done. Right? In comparison, that's actually stretching it. Right? But his days are like a passing shadow. Now, what is a passing shadow? Different from a regular shadow.
When the sun moves?
Yeah. I mean, you watch. Have you ever watched the shadow move? Because, of course, the earth is moving and the shadow moves. It actually goes fairly quickly. But it's gone. But a shadow also is a nothing. See, have you ever grabbed hold of a shadow? Have you ever tried to measure the thickness of a shadow? Have you ever been hit by a shadow and it hurts you? A shadow is a nothing. Okay? So if a shadow is a nothing and it's passing, we're a nothing. And not only that, we're just passing away. We're just going away. Why would God care? Verses 5 and 6. Bow your heavens, O Lord, and come down. Touch the mountains that they may smoke. Now the mountains here are kind of suggesting the idea of states or kingdoms, okay? So, bow your heavens, O Lord, and come down. Take a look at the nations of the world. The ones that are, we call them mighty nations. You know, these real powerhouses on the planet, okay? You just touch them and they smoke. Again, smoke doesn't do much, okay? It's kind of a nothing again. But it also is going to step us into kind of the next set here where in verse 6 it says, flash forth lightning and scatter them. Send out your arrows and confuse them. David is just taking all of these aspects of, let's say, nature to a certain extent and kind of bringing them together so that we have the flash of lightning, which is instant, which does scatter. And if you have ever been really close to where lightning is hit, the first thing you do is scatter. I assure you. I used to watch, always loved watching lightning storms. Okay? We lived in a place where we had a front porch that looked down a hill, and there was a storm rolling in, and we're watching it, and you'll see the lightning flash, and as it gets closer and closer, suddenly a lightning bolt struck about 100 feet in front of us. Okay, we scattered inside the building. Okay, that was close enough. Okay, because you got this fireball that goes up, and it was quite something to see, but you don't want to see it again. Okay. But you got the flashes of lightning that scatters them, send out your arrows and confuse them. This kind of reminds us of an episode that took place on Mount Sinai in Exodus 19:18. Now Mount Sinai was all in smoke because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and that smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked violently. See, when God came to visit his people, to bring his law to his people, his presence was so severe that even the mountain itself quaked. Smoke rose up, okay? And it was violence. But David is talking about that we need that. We need you to come in. We need you, even if it's violently, to straighten us up. Because in verses 7 and 8, stretch forth your hand from on high, rescue me and deliver me from the great waters, out of the hands of aliens. Now you say there's no aliens in the Bible. Well, there they are, right there. Of course, I'm not talking about outer space ones, so I guess it's a little different. Stretch forth your hand. In other words, reach out, God. Reach out and rescue me. I need you to reach out and rescue me because I can't do it myself, and I need to deliver me of the great waters. Now, waters, again, is another word, generic word, that is used quite often to represent peoples, which fits perfectly in this, okay? So, deliver me out of these great peoples, because remember that the whole concept of the nations was there. Now it's, I need to deliver me out of that and out of the hand of aliens. Okay, and here the aliens are those who are outside of the nation of Israel. They would be the aliens. In our respect, it would be those that are outside of the body of Christ. Those are the aliens. So it fits perfectly either Old Testament understanding and New Testament understanding. Because those that he was pleading against are those that are outside of the covenant grace of God. Because who are they? Verse 8 tells us, those mouths speak deceit, and whose right hand is a right hand of falsehood. Those outside of the covenant, those outside of the body of Christ, they speak deceit. Deceit is their nature. Liars are naturally liars because they are followers of the father of lies, Satan himself. So deceit is what comes out. We're quite familiar with deceit. We're quite familiar with lies. And even when lies are pointed out, it seems like, yeah, we knew that was a lie all along, but so what? Why should you care? Okay? No, you just follow this anyway, because it's a lie, but that's all right. We don't care. Lies have become so acceptable because everybody lies. That's the normal thinking. When you tell a person that is a natural liar, which is a lot of people, and you tell them a truth, they have a real hard time actually believing it because nobody tells truth. Lie is the natural course of things. So the truth, there has to be something wrong. Give you a few examples. Every person who has become wealthy has done so by deceit and criminal. There is no such thing as a person that has become wealthy by doing the right thing, by being good and honest. That's the normal mindset, right? It's not true. There are people that have gotten wealthy and they've done it right, and they haven't cheated people. They have operated however good and proper and gotten wealthy by it. Wealth, along with many things, are not an automatic indicator that there's something wrong. Okay, the person who is healthy, they got healthy because they did this, this, and this. The person who is sick got sick because they did this, this, and that. And it ain't true. Now, there is a correlation between them that actually, you might say, we know about, but it's not an automatic. Accepting these lies, and I'm not even going to go into all the recent lies that we've been told over so many other things. I'll just leave that alone. We know what they are. We either believe them or we don't. It's up to you. Okay? Basic understanding is when lies are so relevant, that nobody understands truth or is willing to accept truth, and the whole concept of trust goes away. If we live in a society where trust isn't there, there is so much that cannot happen. Because there's no way that you can legislate trust. Trust is either there or it's not. As followers of Christ, we have a real, genuine obligation to be trustworthy people. Our words should mean something, and they should always be trustworthy. Verse 9, and I will sing a new song to you, O God. See, this is the response to the things God has done upon a heart of 10 strings. I will sing praises to you. See, in response to what God has done, the concept of a new song. What is a new song? It's a song that's new. Really? Come on. Not that difficult. Let's look at a few examples of a new song mentioned. Psalm 40, verse 3. He will put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and will trust in the Lord. Just like the psalm we read, there is something new going on. There's a change that's taking place. Isaiah 42:10. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing his praises from the end of the earth. You who go down to the sea and all that is in it, you islands and those who dwell on them. Something new has taken place. Revelation 5:9. And they sang a new song, saying, worthy are you to take the book and to break the seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe, tongue, and people and nation. The final new song. See, throughout history, we have these workings that God has done, either in individual lives or in nations. And something new and wonderful took place. Whether it be a mass conversion, or you want to call it a revival, whatever, but every time those things happened, going way back into the Old Testament, going all the way up to today, there's a new song. Did you know that if you was to actually go back in history, you will find that when a major thing has taken place, somebody sat down and wrote a new song to commemorate that event? How do you think we got the Star-Spangled Banner? It's a new song. All of these things take place because there is almost like a stop in history, and there is a new start. So we have to have a new song. But the ultimate new song is the one in Revelation, because that's the ultimate change, the ultimate time in which the new song is the last new song. Because all the old things have passed away. And it's all based upon because the worthiness of Jesus to open the seals, because he was worthy because of his sacrifice. Verse 10 and 11, who gives salvation to king? Who rescues David, his servant, from the evil sword? See, now this is actually a repeat of verses 7b and verse 8. Rescue me and deliver me out of the hand of aliens, those whose mouths speak deceit and whose right hand is the right hand of falsehood. The exact same words are being repeated here. That's not that unusual, but it's unusual to see that big a chunk repeated. Quite often you'll see a line repeated, but here you have a big chunk of it. And to be honest with you, I don't know the reason why. I'm sure there's a reason. I just ain't figured it out. Verses 12 through 14a. Let our sons in their youth be as grown-up plants, and our daughters as the corner pillars fashioned for the palace. Let our gardeners be full, flourishing every kind of produce, and our flocks bring forth thousands and 10,000s our field. Let our cattle bear without mishap and without loss. Our sons, our daughters, our gardens, basically, our flocks, our cattle. The psalmist here, David, is calling out to God to bless each one of these things, to watch over each one of these things, and to provide increase. You grow up. Same prayer that I would imagine every parent here and grandparent here has for their offspring. That God protect them, God guide them, God be with them. May they grow up strong. And then also to bring forth the things that are needed, but then the abundance. The abundance almost sounds like greed, but it's not. The abundance here that David is calling for, and the abundance we should be calling for, is that all of this abundance gives us a greater ability to do many things for more people. Here again, we get rid of self and we look out for others. Poor people can only help a few. Wealthy people can help many. The heart is what is necessary, whether they be poor or whether they be wealthy or whether they be in between. David is calling out for the wealth, but for the right reason. Why? Verse 14b. Let there be no outcry in our streets. In other words, there's nobody out in the street crying and wailing because of the lack of whatever. Why are they not out there crying? Because God has provided so much increase, that there is so much available, that his people are well cared for, that there is peace and tranquility in the land. Two ways of approaching so many things in life. There is God's way and there's the world's way. God's way quite often doesn't make sense. Because if we look at it from human perspective, it seems like this cannot be so. That cannot work. But God's way always does work. But how do we know what God's way is and what the world's way is? Well, the first and foremost you can do is, if it's easy, it's the world's way, and if it's hard, it's probably God's way. That's the first and foremost. But how does it align with denial of self and elevation of others? How does this idea of what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to deal with this situation, with these people, that person, whatever, am I taking myself out of it, and am I elevating them in my own eyes? And am I doing for them in a way that helps, truly helps, but not at the expense of tearing them down? We do it at other people's expense, we're doing it the world's way. We're doing it God's way. It will always build people up. The long section in Leviticus 26, verses 1 through 13, I wrote the Reader's Digest version, okay? But the Reader's Digest version gives us the meaning, okay? You shall not make for yourselves idols. In other words, don't put anything above God in front of God. Really comes forward. You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. In other words, you will take that day, you will set it aside, okay? And basically, let's say, and you will show up at church. Makes it easy. If you walk in my statutes, in other words, do the thing God calls us to do, then I will give you, indeed your threshing will last, and your lives securely in your land. I will also grant peace, and they will fall before you by the sword. Your enemies you won't have to worry about. God will take care of them. Make you fruitful. Moreover, I will make my dwelling among you. What more can you ask for if God is going to dwell with us? That is really as good as it can get. I will also walk among you and be your God, and you shall be my people. In other words, not only is he going to be here with us, he's going to walk with us, he's going to be right here, literally right here with us. Right? I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt so that you would not be their slaves, and I broke the bars of your yoke and made you walk erect. In other words, I brought you out of Egypt, but see, in the New Testament terms, you brought us out of slavery to sin. You broke that bond by the death and resurrection of Jesus. So that bond has been broken. You are no longer slaves to sin. You are now children of the King. I made you walk erect. Instead of being bowed over under the tyranny of sin, we can stand tall in the arms and in the ways of Jesus. Because it goes back to verse 15, or continues on verse 15. How blessed are the people who are so situated. How blessed are the people whose God is the Lord. See, those that are situated in God's plan, in God's way of doing things, are blessed. Because they are his. To be a child of God is a blessed thing beyond our comprehension. All of these things takes place. First of all, I am who I am because of who you are. Because of who God is, that has determined who I am, not the other way around. There's the problem many people have. They want a God to be like they decided, like they organized, like they made. No, I am who I am because of what God has done, because of what my Savior has done.